Welcome to the What's Your Ceiling podcast. We're your hosts, Monte Wyatt and Paul Szynski. Wherever you are in life, there is a higher ceiling. This podcast is how you become aware of it and how to take action to push through it. It's time to discover your ceiling. Before we get into this month's episode, here's a short message from Adding Zero's Executive Development. As CEO, you demand performance and results from your team. If you're committed to developing a cohesive, driven organization that achieves successful outcomes every single month, we need to talk. It's time to see how organizational and executive development from Adding Zeros can help. We focus on strategic planning, executive coaching, team alignment and engagement, organizational culture, and clarity of implementation. Contact Monte Wyatt by booking an appointment at www.addZerosNow.com. That's ADDZEROSNOW.com, AddZerosNow.com. If you're ready, now is the time. I have a few coaching spots available for 2025. Lock in your team today. Now let's begin today's episode. Welcome to the What's Your Ceiling podcast, where we talk about your health, your family, your business. I'm your host, Monte Wyatt. If you're a CEO, business owner, or executive, this is the show for you. We call our audience the Achiever because you're always striving for the next level. It is a pleasure to have a great business person and philanthropist with us today. Josh Crisp is considered a thought leader in the senior housing industry. His experience consists of 20 years as a developer, owner, and operator of senior housing communities. Josh owns a family of companies under the name Salinity and Development Management and Marketing. And Josh thrives on building teams and processes to achieve individual and organizational growth and success. From Knoxville, Tennessee, I welcome Josh Crisp. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. You've done a lot of things. You've built a lot of stuff in the last 20 years, and you've done some good things for the communities as well. And so look forward to hearing about those activities that you've done and how you balance it all. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah,
So
likewise.
maybe just start us off. How did you get into the healthcare industry, the senior housing community?
Well, unintentionally, that's for sure. I found myself as a college age, full time working and going to school part time with not a lot of direction for life or business in general. I was a hard worker, but just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I found real estate and became an affiliate broker, as they referred to it here in Tennessee, and found some success working, buying, selling real estate, helping other people buy and sell real estate. Worked my way through college, got out of college, and was working. And thought, I'm pretty good at this. I enjoy certain aspects of it, but I didn't really feel called to do it, so to speak, and was just looking for opportunities. And thankfully, an entrepreneur out of the Houston Medical Center uh, found me and asked me about helping him start this thing called senior living. He had a specific prototype that he had designed, and it was really specific to finding land with church partners that had excess land that we would develop, own, and manage senior care communities on. And of course, I had no idea what senior living was. My first thought was, well, is that nursing homes, and found out really quickly there's a lot more to that. So fast forward, I joined that team. My job was to really help find opportunities for development, and then I found myself being able to, as we got developments going, um, start communities, hire the teams, build the organizational success at the community level, then at the regional level, and had a lot of success running up a corporate ladder for 9 years with what ultimately became a publicly traded, vertically integrated health system. And I worked leading the charge on all the senior care assets and third party management stuff. So learned a lot in a short amount of time, and then ended up getting out on my own in about 2013, and the rest has been history.
So what made you go out on your own?
Well, it was a combination of things. Obviously, you can look back now. Hindsight's always 2020, and you can see how the stars aligned to make it happen. I was what I kind of consider forced out of the comfort nest I might have never left had the conditions not just been right. But we weathered the 2008 recession. That was tough on most real estate verticals during that time. We came out, we were doing third party management. The company and the organization had really started growing. It had became publicly traded. Um, I started sensing a lot of things, even though we were still growing. That mesh of small business culture meets publicly traded life and the pressures that go with that, the different pressures that go with that. So I experienced that. That was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was still, charging full steam ahead. The pressure to relocate if I wanted to continue to grow in that organization was a pressure, and several others. And so while probably could have stayed, where I was for a really long time, it just presented itself that, hey, for the best for my family, it was time to figure out what was next. And so I had no other opportunities but to start up a consulting firm, and I had developed a vast network within the senior housing industry through 9 years of success, and built a lot of bridges. And at that time in 2013, there was a lot of other real estate verticals and developers that were looking to diversify their investment portfolios into senior housing. And this is a very operator centric business. And because I had built teams, built platforms, systems, processes, and I knew the business and the regulatory environment really well, that created opportunity where a lot of the financial stakeholders that were putting investment dollars into these real estate developers that didn't understand the business started calling me and saying, hey, can you help so and so create this platform? Can you create this pro forma? Can you do some consulting here? And so that all culminated in 2013 with an opportunity to launch out on my own and start my own consulting company, where we were able to help a lot of different partners create their successful platforms, most of which are still growing to this day.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Our show is about telling stories of how we've broken through our challenges. And I really would love to hear how you had to change your mindset to go out and be on your own. And, a lot of entrepreneurs do that. They start in corporate America and then they start on their own. And how did you have to think differently? Because that's a big adjustment going from that corporate setting to being out on your own as a consultant.
Yeah, it's a huge paradigm shift, right? I was in the corporate environment with a nice, big, comfortable salary, with benefits, with all the fringe perks, with teams to delegate things to, high level team members to delegate massive projects to, and had a lot of authority. So, while it was high pressure, it was different. You go a 180 from that to go out on your own, and you quickly realize, there's no educational budget to go and provide educational resources. If there's a skill set you need, you learn really quickly that you have to, how I would summarize it, invest in yourself.
Mhm.
And that was huge for me. I had to start investing not only in growing what was now a personal business and those dollars. There was no budgets, there was no salaries, there was no investors. So sort of what you killed is what you ate, as I would describe it. So a one man show. And I realized really quickly I had to find some balance for that, because you can quickly burn yourself out. You can run yourself in the ground. You can run yourself out of resources. And so At that time, I was also a relatively new dad. I had a stay-at-home wife, and I was trying to support her life and decision to do that to raise our children. And so it was scary. So when the insurance goes away, when the benefits go away, you quickly learn it's survival mode.
Mhm.
And in order to be successful, I found I had to balance the family life, the work life, and also taking good care of myself. I had to invest in myself and my health because being in business for yourself with that much at stake, if I get sick, if I go down, everybody goes down at that point. Educational resources, I didn't have any budgets to do that. I had to find a way to educate myself and invest in education for myself. And so that was the biggest shift for me, was just the faucet being turned off overnight and realizing that everything relies on you. And I am real thankful for some of the skill sets that I learned early on in life. I would say not in school, but some values that my family instilled in me, and hard work and perseverance that certainly helped. That was at my core. And then also just some basic skills about living within your means. I think about, as I've talked now to a lot of young, savvy, energetic, uh, entrepreneurial minded individuals that have a lot of success under their belt, have even made a lot of money. Like a lot of us, it's easy to do to live beyond your means, and you have no leverage to go out on your own. So, what happens when you do lose that paycheck or those benefits? Have you put back enough? Have you planned? And so, I'd always lived really below my means. I didn't have debt and I didn't have things like that. And that gave me an opportunity to look at those dollars as, okay, now it's time to invest. It's time to invest in myself, and my career and what would become now a family of companies. And so it wasn't a lot of money, but when you don't have debt, it doesn't take a lot of money, right? And so that gave me leverage to do a lot of things, and so I'm so thankful for some of those values that I was taught, early in my life.
Fantastic. That's what has to drive us, our boundaries, our values that we live by. That helps us make the right decisions. That helps us stay focused. And how have you done that within your companies? Keeping that culture aspect of it, the values. How have you built the culture in your organizations?
Well, I've been blessed since really my first career opportunity. I was blessed that my value set, my life value set, if you will, really aligned well with my mentor, the business owner, and so that was sort of an easy transition for me. And when I went out on my own, I was able to align and not really have to compromise. When I was put in positions where I thought I might have to compromise, I just didn't take those opportunities. So I didn't have to really fake anything. So all the organizations I've either helped start was regardless of the brand, they all ran with the same value set. And I believe it's a very um, uh, great fundamental value set that is just good and practical for business. There's nothing rocket science behind it, but aligning yourself with the value set that is in your personal life makes everything easier, right? Because you don't have to go to work and leave your home and act a different way, to make decisions a different way. It's just how you live. And realizing that that may not be the way everyone is, you can quickly pick where you're going to be successful, because you can only fake it for so long, I think, or you can only endure the misery for so long, I think. And so we at the Salinity ecosystem, as I call it, the family of companies now, every single company, while it's a very different type and style of business in the vertical that we're in, which is senior housing and healthcare, they all have the same value set of core values that drives them. And so when I have to switch hats between the different specialties of companies, I don't have to try to fit my value set into a unique value set that in a culture. So it makes transitioning between multiple companies for me nowadays much easier. And we're pretty vocal about that. You know, I wouldn't say we wear it on our sleeves, but when we're recruiting, we hire to recruit to that value set. When we hire, we hire to that value set, and we hold to that standard. And there's a cohesiveness that comes to that because there's certainly going to be disagreements and people challenging each other and ideas and things like that. But at the core, if you're all operating with the same value set, it becomes easier to make decisions and stay together. And I would say that's what's helped us.
I love to hear that about core values aligning with your personal life, but also hiring on it and recruiting on it, because that's what you want to build. And I'm guessing you've had people that for some reason didn't match your core values. And how did that turn out? And what did you do to address that?
Well, I mean, I would say the process is probably not different than most personnel processes and how you deal with it necessarily, but I would say it's much easier to identify, right? It becomes less personal if the standards are known and the value sets are clearly defined from the beginning, from the time, and you can reference back. You know, it's not like a surprise. So when you have a situation, especially if it came down to value compromise, we go back to, hey, you remember when that post or that ad you saw, what it said about this? Do you remember in our interview what we talked about? Do you remember in your onboarding? Do you remember the job description that said we're gonna perform consistent with these values and conduct ourselves? And at every step of the way, if they've heard the consistent messaging and that has been the measure, that's been the canon, so to speak, then it's not like a big surprise. It's not a paradigm shift or an I got you moment. It's like, hey, this is kind of what we've agreed to do together. What changed? You know, what got off rails? Or again, were you faking it until you could make it and now you just can't fake it anymore? So it makes the conversation a little bit more straightforward and I would say less personal. So.
I'm really glad you shared that because I think that's a challenge that many businesses have is that culture, bringing it all together, but then having the right team in place. And you do have to select them on the core values. We can train them to do what we want, but we've got to make sure that they live the way we want, they have the values that we desire, and they're aligned with our focus. So I really appreciate you sharing that. You mentioned a couple times building teams and building processes. I'd love to hear more about how you've built a team and what that took and what that looked like.
Yeah, well, I'm a really simple person. I think I've got a pretty simple, non-complex mind. I think, and I have to dumb things down, complex processes, just so I can understand them a lot of times, and so they're easier to execute. So I don't make it really challenging. I don't think it all starts with, when I go into an organization or whether it's existing or whether we're creating, there's typically a vision. You got to really understand where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to get to? I mean, what way out there, what are you trying to achieve? So start there. I start with the macro. And whether you're dealing with a company or whether you're dealing with a person that you're talking to, like where do you want to go? And where do you want to be, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever that is, or whatever idea you have for your product or service or your company, that's where I begin. And I work backwards from there. So from the macro, then we work on strategy. I've found a lot of leaders, a lot of great leaders are sometimes great visionaries, but they struggle with execution. And then I've found the opposite of that too. I found like people that are really good at executing, but they don't know where they're going, right? And so I think it takes both. So we start with the macro, and then we look at, okay, realizing that no matter what plan we put forth, we're gonna have pivots, we're gonna have obstacles, some that we create for ourselves, hopefully not too often, but then stuff that gets thrown in our way, like a global pandemic. Who saw that coming, right? That touched us all. But you have a mission. You create a mission towards the vision. And the mission, for us has always been, as I said, I've had the benefit to be able to say, okay, here's the mission, but within that, here's the bounds that we're going to operate, and that's our value set. And when you recruit to that value set with this big overarching vision and then the mission, which is sort of the marching orders of what we're here to do to achieve that big mission, that tends to excite people. Where I've found where you get in trouble is when people have to wonder, where are we going? How are we going to get there? Who's going to help us? So we try to take out a lot of doubt by just being really clear with that. What's our vision? What's our mission? What's our values? How are we going to execute this? And so I've found when you lead with all of that, rather than this is a job posting, this is what task we need you to do, it helps attract the right people that need to be in the organization. So it's almost like the filter. You've put the filter out there that's going to help you and your hiring be a lot more efficient, because the individuals that are showing up, most likely, if you've done a good job at telling your story, they've already bought into it. They've already
Yeah.
bought into, oh, I love that vision. Oh my gosh, what a compelling mission. I feel called to that. I want to be part of that. So then as an employer, as a hirer, as a recruiter, as an HR person, you're not trying to have to sell them on why they need to join you. You're trying to just determine, are they the best fit for that position, right? And so that helps. I'll also say, oftentimes in organizations, because we all have a product and or a service that we're selling, right? There's something that we're doing that we're trying to sell, but we can oftentimes get so focused on the end result that we forget the people that get us there. And so, I had that paradigm shift in my career in the corporate environment when I was thinking, okay, the resident of our communities, the patient, the resident, whatever we want to call them, the member of our community, that older adult that we were providing services to, that became so much of my focus that I realized, well, I'm working so hard. My teams are working so hard. How are we missing this? How are we missing that? Like, I've got a process for it. Why aren't they getting the process? Like, just execute, right? I know you're passionate people. I know you understand the mission vision, and I realized that my team gets probably sick of me hearing this phrase called the love tank, but I realized I was working really hard. My teams were working really hard to fill the love tank physically, emotionally, spiritually of our resident, which was our end game, right? That's what we're really selling. That's what we're really striving for. But we really had no tools in place or processes to fill the love tank of ourselves. So what happens is you come in with this full tank, right, to the workplace because you've bought into the vision, you bought into the mission, you're all excited. Things are good when you first start working. And then you get into the grind, you get into the battle lines, you get into the daily, and, it just chips away, at our energy and all those things that make us perform really well and show up excited to work and motivation and things like that. And I think you have to be really super intentional about putting systems in place that allow people to stay motivated, right? And prevent the burnout and prevent all the things that you often wonder as an employer. It's like, wow, how did we get off to such a great start? And then 2 years in, high performing employee somehow is out the door. Where did I get off track? And so I think I equate that to, like, that's the love tank. It just
Mhm.
keeps getting emptied and emptied and empty. And when you run out of gas in the love tank, you have nothing to give. And so we want to really strive, and I wouldn't say we've in any of our companies we've got that figured out, but it is a focal point, right? It's like, how do we continually put more in to that team member? Because what we want them to do is to have a full love tank, so that when they go to battle, when they go to do whatever their task is to do, they've got a full tank. They're ready to run. They're ready to even help others. If others need um, getting close to empty, well, let me give you some of mine, and I'll go get some more. Right. So that's the most simple illustration I can give you of our philosophy for that.
I want to reinforce to our audience, the achiever, a couple things that you said because I think it's really powerful. People want to know what the vision is. They want to know how we're going to get there, that mission, and they want to know what the boundaries are, what the rules of the game are, what the values are. And people are excited about that. You get emotionally connected when you have those things. And that's a big part of what you just walked through. And I also want to say I love what you talked about, the love tank. We spend so much time servicing the customer or the resident, as you mentioned, that we forget about our internal customers, our employee base. And we have to, if we're not treating our employees well, it's going to be hard to treat those customers well. And we want them to stay motivated. We want them to stay focused. So I love that you put energy into that. That's fantastic. You know, as you've grown your business, what's a big risk that you've taken that you really had to change your thinking, you had to change your actions to break through that risk?
Well, I think there's a lot, probably a lot of things we could sit and talk a lot about. But for me, it's when I've needed to find leverage, and what I mean by that. So when I first started and I launched out on my own, right? You've got limited resources, right? Limited capital. I didn't put together a business. I'm not an MBA. I didn't know how to put together a business plan per se, that with charts and graphs and ROIs and things like that. That I would go out and attract investment dollars, and I would take a salary, and I would use somebody else's money to drive a company. I literally just had to figure out how to invest in myself. And so that meant I had to start small, and I had to be really, really good in the small things. And so, whatever I was given to do within my narrow scope, I had to become the expert. So, in the beginning, it was a very strategic strategy in helping other people be extremely successful, right? I knew how to do that really well because I knew the business really well, but I didn't have the capital to go and invest in the real estate side of the business, which is really big mega dollars to get into the real estate side of senior housing and healthcare. And so when I transitioned and I thought, you know what, I'm going out and I'm creating these platforms based on this value set I have, and building teams, and they're very successful, right? Because of all the things we've kind of walked through. The communities filled up fast. They were very financially successful. But what I realized is a lot of times in the real estate world, um, the way that real estate is oftentimes successful is through that initial investment having an exit strategy. I learned that, and what I was building for others was being sold as soon as I made it successful. And the faster I made it successful, the faster it sold. And I realized, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm attracting a consumer, which is the resident, the person that's receiving the care, or the stakeholder, which is the gatekeeper, the decision maker to the industry. And they're trusting me with their most valuable asset, which is their loved one at a point of frailty in their life. And I am selling them that this culture of trust, compassion, care, love, dignity, honor, all the things that we pride ourselves on, and it's successful. But then I'm losing control at 2, 3, 4, year 5, and that asset is sold, which is the vehicle that we provide care through that team in that community. And I have to start all over with the process, with another platform, with more communities. And then all of those people that I was the face of that operation, that trusted me, whether it was the team members or the residents or their families, they're sitting there scratching their head because they don't really understand how behind the scenes works with the real estate and the investment. And so for me, that I'm getting somewhere with this. Basically, this is what was the inflection point for me. It was like, wow, you know what? If that feels icky to me, and I don't want to have that happen any longer, what kind of leverage do I have? How do I have more control over that culture longer term? And
Mhm.
that's when I really had to dig in and get out of my comfort zone on, well, how could I be involved in the real estate side? I'm the consultant and the manager, but how do I own that part of the process? So for me, getting to these points along my career to where I was like, wow, here's an area where if I want to be able to have more impact and control over a greater outcome, there's this huge gap of not only expertise but financial wealth that I have to cross over that barrier, and to get over that obstacle seems like an ocean I have to swim across. So I would say those have been my through the years, like the big opportunity moments for me to grow. And I think in those opportunities, you can either just say, "Hey, that's an ocean I can't try to swim across. The waters are too turbulent, the risk is too high," and you can be comfortable and stay where you are. Perhaps I'm a firm believer that nothing's ever really sitting still. You're typically moving with the current somewhere, or you're going against the current. But that's been the biggest point. So when I decided to go from a manager in a consulting company and third party management, making other people very successful, to investing again in myself at a higher level and taking bigger risk. And when you decide to be self-funded investor and you collateralize your home, you collateralize all of your bank accounts, your savings, your little bit of 401k, any investments, and you put all the chips on the table, which I'm not even advising. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not saying anyone to do that. But that was the risk for me that I took to try to gain more leverage to be able to have more control over culture long term, and quality of care towards older adults.
You just shared something very valuable. You've got to invest it yourself in different stages of the business and different stages of your life.
That's
You know,
right.
you reach a plateau, you got to learn something new to go to the next plateau. You got to break through that next ceiling, but you have to learn, you have to grow, you have to change, and you have to become something different to get to that next level. So, how would you say you're different today than you were 3, 4 years ago?
I'd say, well, in the last 3 or 4 years have been really turbulent waters. So in 2018, when I officially launched the brand Salinity, we were not quite as integrated as we are today. So every year's been a growing experience. So today, we've got a full service development company, a full service management company, and a full service marketing and PR agency. I would say that diversity helped us weather, a very rough period for the business on the development side. When we looked at going into the end of 2019, going into 2020, if we would have been having this similar conversation, I would say the biggest risk in the investment I'm making is on in the real estate side of the market. And we didn't have a marketing agency per se. We had a marketing team that we were building really to just handle our in-house marketing needs for all of our communities and brands and companies. And in 2020, the rug was completely pulled out from under us on, and so we, lost basically everything we had invested in the real estate development pipeline, and it went stale for roughly 3.5 years. And that was the plan. I mean, that was the where we had put most of our eggs in that basket. But because of I guess the diversity of revenue streams that we had created, and being opportunistic and I would say nimble to be flexible to take the opportunities that were presented within our vertical. We kept working on those development pipelines, even though they weren't moving ahead. But our marketing team had the opportunity to really grow and become a full service agency during COVID. That was not the plan, but we utilized the skill set of the team to pivot. So in our industry, which has traditionally been very much behind the times in marketing and sales, particularly in digital side, um, people started calling and saying, "Hey, Josh, like, you guys do such a great job at this area. You've had a lot of success in PR and marketing and sales over a variety of years. Who's doing that for you all?" And when we could say what we do to our competitors, competitor services that do the same thing that we were doing, um, when most often you wouldn't think I'm going to help a competitor be really good at marketing and sales because their competitor, we did that. And we said, sure, if we can help you, if we can help our industry, everybody's better for that. And so that's what we did. And that really helped us be able to weather the storms, and then now created one of the fastest growing companies I've ever started. And that was very unintentional. And I would say providential as well. And so today we're much more integrated. It makes us much more durable. It makes us a little bit more versatile, and candidly gives us a competitive advantage, and allows us to provide help to others in our industry. And just a snapshot of our industry, and to tell you that your customers, your consumer of this show, our industry, while we do a lot of great things, we only capture about 9% of the age income qualified population that needs our services. So
Mhm.
what that tells me is that, there's plenty of work. So I don't really have to necessarily just focus on what we can take on. I can help others as well. And by doing that, it's actually helped us be more influential in the industry, and people look to us for solutions.
Absolutely. Uh, I love what you said about adjusting and pivoting, and it's it is weathering the storm. You've got to make sure that you're anticipating and you're seeing the needs of the marketplace, and you're making adjustments, and that needs to happen all the time. And sometimes it's forced on us, sometimes we have to do it naturally. But I appreciate you sharing that. I really appreciate the conversation. You've shared a lot today, and I want to reinforce a couple things. You talked about investing yourself a number of times, and to go to that next level, to keep growing. But building teams is a big part of it. You got to have your value system, and you've got to make sure that everyone's living by your value system. But you have to have that direction, that mission, that vision of where you're headed and how you're going to get there. And people want to know those things. So, to our audience, make sure you're communicating those things to your team, because that's a powerful thing that creates that emotional connection that sometimes gets lost. And people want to know where they're headed. They want to know that it's a safe place for the future. So, I really appreciate that. I always like to ask, what do you want to be known for? As your life comes to an end, what do you want to be memorized at?
Oh man, that's a really that's a big question. Well, I would just simplify and say, I want people to be able to look back and said I was fully invested in helping people be their best wherever they are. Whether that's at one of our communities, the residents, realizing that they have a sense of purpose, regardless of their frailty or their age. As long as they're breathing, they have a great purpose, and they should live that purpose every day. Or to our team members who are serving, that they have a great purpose and they have a great mission, and we can be part of that journey with them. To my kids, I would say the same thing. Whatever they decide they're young in their lives to do, while I have great ideas and dreams for them, I don't define their purpose, and that's given to them uniquely. There's nobody that can live that purpose better than they can. And so I hope that at some point people see that that's been really one of my kind of overarching goals.
That's fantastic. That's very honorable. And I just want to ask one thing. We haven't talked about it, but you're very philanthropic as well, correct?
I try to be. Yeah, I think it's really important. I was taught from a young age. I think it's a really popular saying, but it was very much instilled to me that um, people don't really care what you know until they know that you care. And I came from a very giving family. Didn't have resources. I was not raised in any kind of wealth. Um, and but I saw my family constantly giving of anything that they had, the shirt off their back, sometimes literally, and that translated into my life. And so when we had the opportunity, for me, the way I looked at it, I can write a check, right, to an organization to help, and I've done that. But is there anything I can do to 10x that? And so, from a philanthropic standpoint, I've had the opportunity through building brands and teams, and understanding how to assimilate towards a vision, to be able to have the opportunity to create some events in an organization that is a philanthropic, volunteer based 501(c)(3) that um, has now about 30 ambassador volunteers in 13 states, and a volunteer board. And that organization is able to raise a lot of money towards the cause of Alzheimer's research, education, support, and care, as a complete give back from our companies. That is way larger than any check that I could have written by myself. So, how I justify those efforts is being able to bring people together to be better together. And some people do call me a philanthropist, and I'll accept that. But it's really just about trying to achieve the most for whatever cause that we're getting behind.
I really appreciate that you do that because I do think it's one of our responsibilities as not only a human but as business people to help those that are less fortunate and be philanthropic and helping our communities and helping them improve. So I love to hear that you balance that. So, Josh, I really appreciate all your insights and our audience, the achiever. Hopefully you gained 3 or 4 ideas here today because I think it's good to learn from other successful business people and leaders in no matter what industry they're in. There's a lot to learn, and I think we gained a lot today from Josh. So, Josh, any last tips that you'd want to give to our achiever out there that's going towards that next level?
Well, I would just say no matter what you're going through, what point of personal life, business life, professional life, you have leverage moments. And those moments oftentimes are the tough moments. So if you're in one of those tough moments right now, know that you will come out of it, and you're going to be able to use that experience for the greater good of yourself and others. If you're not in that moment, you will go through that moment. And so make sure that you have that in your mind, that when you face that challenge, that is an opportunity in and of itself. And so get through it, learn from it, use it for good on the other side. And that's what I'd leave with your audience.
Awesome. Awesome. Josh, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And if our audience wanted to get a hold of you and learn more about what you do or see if there's value together, how would they connect with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn or most socials just by my name, Josh Crisp, and actually the tag is Josh Crisp Official. But you can visit our website at solinity.com. That's SOLINITY.com. And there's links there to all the different organizations, companies, and to me personally, and be happy to connect with any of your audience.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thanks to our audience for joining us today. Make sure you like our show, make sure you subscribe, and keep learning, keep growing, keep going to that next level and breaking through the next ceiling. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.